was like the perfect song, and you let us sing along. Now you're gone, but your spirit soars in our hearts forevermore.
Hi, welcome to the show, I Pressed On, taking the word depression and rearranging it to something more positive. I'm Brian Chrysagas, and this is my co-host, Barbie Sagaris. And today, we really have some wonderful guests on this show.
We've had great guests.
But this one is one of my dear, dear friends, and she has made a difference in my life. And I'm so honored to have her with Edra Scalia. But do you want to tell us your middle name? You went with your previous name.
Why would I want to tell you that?
So everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, my business name is Edra Blixseth.
I know you as Edra Scalia because
Correct.
You married Jack Scalia, who's a dear, dear brother to me and a dear friend and a wonderful actor. But we're going to get on some serious subjects today. And I was doing a statistic on abuse because that's going to be one of the topics. And it's 1 out of 4 women in America are abused, and 1 out of 7 men are abused. So that's shocking to me because I was very sheltered, so I never knew abuse happens like that. And my dad never would have laid a hand on my mother, and if he did, our mother would be out the door, you know. But he just honored her, and she was the love of his life. So I don't relate to that, but you do. And before we get into that part of your life, could you tell us your upbringing first?
I was raised in the Bay Area, California, and 3 sisters, so we were the Sanders sisters, and kind of a middle-class, normal family. To the best of my knowledge, there wasn't abuse or domestic violence. There's a difference in abuse because it could be drugs or alcohol, or this is domestic violence that we're talking about. So I wasn't exposed to it, or it wasn't part of what I knew anything about.
Yes. So, but your father honored your mother the way...
I wouldn't think of them to say honored. Do they have a great relationship and a great marriage? But none of that was going on.
Okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't honored. He might have driven 2 hours to get away from her, but maybe not making food for her. But it was fine. It was kind of a normal, 50s, 60s, 70s family.
Well, take us to when you were growing up. Then, did you gravitate to the bad boys, or?
I don't think so. I was so young that I didn't really. I can't really tell you because I was the typical cheerleader in high school, having fun, and he was number 15 on the football team, and then I got pregnant.
Wow.
So I don't think that I gravitated to anyone because I was young and dumb. And did I know before I married him that there were signs and tendencies? Yeah, when I look back. But at the time I didn't. Like I said, it wasn't really something that was in my sphere of knowledge.
Did you love him, or were you more like, okay, we're going to have to do something?
It's hard to say. Is it hard to say it when you get married at 17 and you're pregnant if you love someone? And he was 18, 19.
But how long did
But he
that
was your
last?
first, so that always is.
Well, you hope so. Yeah.
Yes.
And he was.
Yes.
But we were married for 10 years, so it wasn't, and it really started quite soon in the marriage, but there weren't really the tools. There weren't people talking. It wasn't. Nobody talked about it in proper society. It was kind of considered a blue collar, and that kind of a thing rather than, and that's why everyone hid it.
Yes.
So. Well, when you watch the old movies like on TCM, it's like almost normal. Like you'll see a man slap a woman in an old movie or something like that. Yeah,
but that kind of slapping is kind of like, that was kind of then. It wasn't beating someone up.
No.
And it wasn't pulling them around by their hair.
Unless you were in a movie with Barbara Stanwyck, and
That's true. But they all deserved it.
slap.
Yeah. So I didn't write the book. I wrote a book about domestic violence. This is before Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered.
Yes.
And that kind of switched everything because then you could talk about it and kind of nobody understood it, let's say, but it wasn't it wasn't hidden anymore, and you could have a cocktail party and someone would talk about what happened to her, domestic violence.
Right.
So more and more it started coming out.
Now, what was
Who
the name of the book?
Yeah.
What was-
Uncharged battery.
And who encouraged you to write that? How did you?
Nobody. I started writing. My children from that marriage were getting older, and I didn't think they knew anything. Trust me, that's the one thing people should know. Your children know the
Everything.
things. They don't talk about it because you
Wow.
don't.
Yeah.
But it started out as letters to a son and a daughter to say, I want you to know, first of all, the daughter never to put up with it.
Absolutely.
Son never to do something like that, but I didn't realize at the time, but sons need to be told that too, because it happens and it's sometimes harder for them to tell about it. So that's how it started out. And then as it flowed, I kind of started putting chapters together without even realizing I was doing that. And then nobody was writing about it, and I told a few people, and so
Did you find that being very healing for you to jot down all that, or was it painful to go
it was
back?
painful, but it was also healing. And it was also that you could see things that, people question things like, why did someone stay? Or, why do you put up with that? I remember when I was on book tour with Oprah Winfrey, she said, this is the thing I can't get. Why do people put up with it? Why do they stay? And the reason is because women are kind of raised to fix things within the family.
That's right,
You
yeah.
don't tell things.
Yeah.
And so and it feels like a failure. You
Right.
keep trying to fix things. You keep,
And the church has always frowned on divorce, so you
Absolutely.
want to keep
Yeah,
it together
absolutely.
if you could.
And embarrassment. Don't want to be embarrassed by their
Yeah.
friends or their family, or
and they
maybe
think
divorce.
of it more that you're stuck in that situation.
Right.
I was the breadwinner in that family, so I wasn't stuck financially in that situation. It actually allowed me just to be gone more, so I kind of made that my excuse to do things. But the most important thing now, because to me this is such old news, sorry, but the most important thing that needs to be talked about now is 30 years later, it's still a huge problem.
Yes. Yes.
And
a
in
huge
fact,
problem.
perhaps a bigger problem right now.
yes.
People can talk about it, but some of the reasons and some of the ways things are handled within the law. One thing that I feel really good about is at UCLA, Uncharged battery was required to be read by social workers and police officers because they didn't understand, why are we even going in there? She's not going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
She's not going to stay. They didn't understand the dynamics of what happens. And so why people stay is there's a gamut of reasons, but it's not because they enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's not because they think they deserve it, although they do, because they usually make excuses
Yeah.
for why he did something. I screwed up the dinner. I did, there's never a reason,
Yes.
ever.
But
Right.
a lot of women think there is a reason. There's low self-esteem. So you kind of-
The structure of one uncharged battery was it was in 3 different sections, and one was what happens when you live in that situation. You become an uncharged battery. Your
Oh, that's a
self-esteem.
great name.
Yes.
That
Your
is.
self-esteem goes down. The things that you thought were wrong, but you couldn't figure it out, everything gets jumbled up. And the second part is that you don't normally charge battery. Anyone else did it, you would charge them with battery or contact the police.
True.
That's
But
very
you
good.
don't charge somebody within the
You
domestic
have
violence.
many different.
And the third was what happens if you leave a battery and a flashlight or something else and you see it corroding,
goes
till it
bad.
dies.
Yeah.
Wow.
So even if you are not killed in that, your soul is dying
Yes,
to stay in that
that's very
situation.
good. I
So,
love that analogy.
thank you. And the most important thing is people need to remember they're important.
Yes.
Not fixing things, not putting up with things. They're important. And you keep the importance on yourself, then everything else works out.
That's beautiful, Edra. That's very wise. But from then, you got divorced,
Yes.
and then you
Thank God.
fell in love with another man.
Somebody else. Yeah, I was in that marriage for 10 years. For being so young and dumb and all that kind of thing was legitimately 10-year marriage. Yeah, I got married to Tim Blixseth. That's the last name you asked me to say that
Yes.
my husband doesn't like me saying anymore.
But he was very well off.
Not in the beginning. We both, I owned a restaurant, hotel chain, and like I said, I was the breadwinner for that marriage. And he was in the timber business. And he was doing fine and all that, but then a lot of things happened, and people remember in the early 80s, and so there was trial and error on some stuff of financially as well. So, but we built a pretty amazing, successful business together.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And had fun doing it.
Yeah, but your life made headlines with a huge scandal while you were married to him, correct?
Well, yeah. The scandal is one of those things that depends on how you read the headlines. Yeah, the headlines, depending on which version you read, it was a big controversy. We co-developed a place called Yellowstone Club in Montana, and it was a one of the kind. At the same time, we had built something called Porcupine Creek in Rancho Mirage, and as our private home, and that's one of a kind. So we got press from that, and our one of our slogans for Yellowstone Club is where families gather. So when the headlines hit that are getting a
Destroyed.
divorce, and then it just got scorched earth from there towards me. So again, I would consider that, and what I went through in those years, also abuse. It was not physical, but it was definitely not something I expected that his personality would end up doing, but yeah.
Yeah, and what's amazing is with one disaster after the next disaster, and yet, did you have any faith, or did you find your faith during that time?
I was raised extremely religiously, that at the time, felt I escaped from, because it was too controlling for me, too judgmental and that kind of thing. So I think I found my faith in forgetting my faith.
Relearning it.
Relearn.
Yeah,
had to
and then
relearn
and then
what
saying what's missing here, and it didn't come back from a religious standpoint. It came back from knowing that there is a God.
Yes.
And my teachings, I mean, the Sunday school, things that come back in your head of when you're going through something of you're singing "Jesus Loves Me." It's like you remember those things. So I think it came back gradually, but you go through times where you feel like you're a good person and you think you're doing the right things and all that, but you realize you get caught up in the circumstances.
Yes.
And what happened with me with my ex is that I gradually, a couple of my kids even came to me and said, "Mom, we thought you went to the dark side." And I was like, "What?" Because I was gradually covering for him. We end up being the facade of things that I clearly know now aren't right. Did I think if I hadn't divorced him, would we still be doing what we were doing? No, because once you see something for the reality of it, you have to either face it and know that this is the reality, or now you're living a lie.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, my brother used to, Sean, when we would do concerts and stuff, he used to tell a story, and it really fits. This little boy was, the parents moved to a pond. We're next to a pond, and there's alligators in that pond. And they kept telling the little boy, "Tommy, don't go by that pond. There's alligators in the pond. They could hurt you." Well, they go to bed one night, and the little boy runs, and he goes into the pond, and the alligator grabs him, and he starts screaming for his mother. His mother goes, and she tries to save him. She's screaming for the father. The father goes, gets a gun. While the mother's pulling at the child, he's like being ripped apart by the alligator and then her. And then the father finally shoots the alligator. When they get him to the doctor, the little boy is examined, and he says, "Your legs, you're going to be crippled. You have scars on them. Is that where the alligator got you?" He said, "Yes." Then he says, "Well, your arms, they have scars on them. Is that where the alligator?" And he says, "No, that's where my mom was holding me, and she wouldn't let me go." And he used that as an analogy of Satan trying to pull us down and God trying to pull us up. So our scars sometimes are testimony of what God is trying to save us from. And your scars have made you a better person. Not only a better person, but one that has more discernment, because you went through hell and back, and now you're here to be able to use your scars to heal somebody else.
Yeah, and talking about it, I mean, unfortunately, mine were on newspapers. Like I didn't. It's kind of like in one interview with the New York Times that my current husband and I were kind of part of, is I said, when you're standing kind of naked on top of the mountain anyway, you might as well tell it. You might as well say what's been going on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was forced to, because I still had that thing in me from the first marriage, or from that try to keep it as private as possible.
Yes.
Try to just get through this, try to settle it, keep quiet. And, maybe that's the lesson here. I don't know. We're always learning lessons.
Well, what would you tell somebody watching today that's going through that? What would be the number one thing you would tell
On the
them?
domestic violence, or the
Yes.
other? Domestic violence is just realize you're important, realize, and other people, if you see the signs, rather than just keeping quiet or thinking you'll embarrass or whatever. It's okay. It's okay to bring it up. In fact, you should.
And what about the public humiliation? Because you went through a lot.
Still going through it, kind of. My poor husband. I don't know. I don't know any. I wish I could say other people in that situation. It's so unique.
Yes.
It was so public. It was so drawn with, not just the 1% where Yellowstone Club members are. It's the 0.05%. I mean, so bringing into having so much wealth and so much opinion of that into that it made it the drama of our divorce, and then the drama of subsequent to that of the scorched earth and the years of court and that kind of thing. I don't know who to tell.
Yeah.
I don't really know who else has been through that.
But there's so many people, even if because they may not be able to go through exactly what you went through, but over the history, if you look at all these public scandals,
True.
Let's say Jim and Tammy Baker, that was a horrible one.
Yeah.
And Tammy didn't deserve it. You know what I mean? But yet people love to talk, and they destroy people's reputations, and they run with rumor, whether it's true or whether it's not. They love you when you're popular, and then when you fall, they love destroying you. There's just, and then Burt Reynolds and Lonnie Anderson, and then you look at Donald Trump's whatever.
Well,
he's
even we
been
had
through so
Todd
much.
Fisher on here, Elizabeth Taylor and Debbie Reynolds.
Yes.
And Todd Fisher, that whole
That's true. And so if you look at it from that helps
Right.
me to give you an answer, because
Right.
I think the most important thing is when you're going through that old song, going through hell, keep on walking.
Keep walking.
But when you stop and think about it, like I had scorched earth on in the newspapers and among the members and who didn't know and all that. They can't take your soul.
That's beautiful.
They can't take what you did do that was good.
Yes.
They can momentarily, and it can feel like that, and trust me, it did. But they can't. If your credibility and your insides are based on what you own and what you have, which was my ex-husband, then they can, because what do you have?
Yeah.
But that's not what
That's
mine
very
was
good.
But
based
that's
on.
not
That's
what,
very,
That's
very
not
good.
what mine was based on. And so
Right.
then my core could get back to it. And trust me, I mean, we talk about, you guys know my husband now, Jack. It wasn't that it was that easy, because the scars you mentioned, they have to
Absolutely.
be healed. You can't ignore them.
You can't keep putting a Band-Aid
No,
over
and
it.
you can't pretend you didn't go through that, because
Yes.
I'm out of it now.
Yes.
Because I could see some similarities to what I did, even when I talked about my mother on,
Right.
on that, then
Absolutely.
to who I married the first time, and then the 25-year marriage, even though
100%.
there was great success there and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I could see that I didn't change some things that I needed to be responsible for.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like the thing when you're not the bad one, everybody makes you the good one. That doesn't mean you don't have crap you need to do.
We
you
all
need to
have
look in the
garbage,
mirror.
yeah, we
That's
have
right.
something.
Right.
So,
But
So-
at the same time, I know we're running out of time, but I want to bring your handsome husband
Yeah,
up. You
'cause
finally
God-
have
God
Prince
brought
Charming.
two
thank you. Thank
great
you,
people
God.
together.
Yeah.
Where is he?
And you found love
Well, he's
again.
out.
Get up
Come on
here.
up here, Jack.
Come on, Jack.
Thank you.
Hey, Jack, would you
Hey,
share?
Brian.
Get on your knees.
That's how she keeps him. You've learned your lesson. You're now over him.
No, he's proposing to you once again.
No, the happiness of this relationship, I've known you through all these years, 20-some years, it was 25 years or so, and you were always looking for love in all the wrong places, too. And now I can
Doesn't make
honestly...
me a bad guy.
No, it doesn't, but I can tell you, I have never seen you more happier than you are now.
Oh, thank you.
And that's a blessing.
Thank you.
Because
Well,
we kept praying. We watched you go through some really.
Do you know our
Hey, Jack,
our
I'm in the
blended
same boat there.
our blended family as our adult children, and we have some adult grandchildren. We have 8 grandchildren now. have said they've never seen a better version of either of us. So that's
great.
something.
Yeah, but they're all kids, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we
Yeah,
don't tell them
they-
things.
yeah,
We
yeah,
still
yeah.
hide things.
No,
No, but what is the secret to finding what you guys found in each other? I mean, really, I mean, and going through what you guys went through, the scandal.
Even together.
And everything
Yeah.
together. But you stood, I loved Stand By Your Man of Tammy Wynette, but you stood by him and he stood by you. I mean, that's really what it's.
Well, for me, I think that, well, when you go, you know, my life was, was very difficult for a long time, you know,
Yes.
through how I grew up, you know, my childhood. And then going through my drug addiction and my alcoholism and then coming out on the other side. And even during my sobriety, when I wasn't taking care of myself with my 12-step program and doing other things to make my life better, then that crazy Jack comes back out.
Yes.
So getting back to all of the experiences, I guess, for me, has brought me to a place where I think that I'm more discerning and more probably loving and caring, and I listen better than I ever did before.
Yes.
And she yells a lot, so I have to listen.
No, we're getting hearing aids.
Yeah. But I think it's as you mentioned, I think you said something about having the scars, and that
Yes.
you go through the scars, and from the scars they can become something that can propel you or move you forward, and not look upon them as something that's ugly, but something that can really be very healing, and
Absolutely.
it could be very. I have been introspective about it, but I think then me knowing Edra's story that she shared with you, and there's a lot more to it, and then having gone through some of that together helped.
Yes.
And then, you know, there was we spent time apart because of what was happening.
Well, my life was a tsunami, you know, and So I mean,
Yeah, so I think that, but it, you know, as we went forward, we always stayed in touch with each other.
Yes.
We always over there support one another when needed, and then it just came a time when it just seemed like it was right, and then even when it seemed like it was right, we still had to go through growing pains through that too. God plays I believe, a big part in our lives. I mean, when we're with the children, the grandchildren, even when not, there's always everybody holds hands, and there's a prayer.
Well, when
always.
you put that's beautiful. When you put God where He belongs, and then the two people are wanting to please Him, but yet they work
put it
together.
first in your home.
Then
Yes.
it all comes together,
Yeah.
and that's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's like my part in it, I think, and then Edra has hers, you know. So how she would respond to what your question is, why are we here now, how we got here.
What would you say, Edra? What kept you together?
ditto. No,
Basically what he said. Yeah.
no, it is, and I think the most important thing for people to hear that they're listening to this is that it can sound like, Cinderella or a fairy tale story,
Yeah.
or and it's not. Even when things are good, you can't pretend to have things go away. You got to work at it,
Absolutely.
and God's part of it, and
Right.
His program is part of it, and just seeing those things. And is it wonderful, and is it happy, and do we joke all the time and laugh? Yes. But there's still the part that you don't ignore.
Yes.
And you don't just find, a fairy godmother, and she goes like this, and then everything's
Because
okay.
you're bringing all your stuff,
Right.
and he's bringing all his.
and
So
we're
it's
blending families,
yes.
and so, but you can feel the difference when it's worth it.
That's beautiful.
You're not fighting something to hang on to it. You're working on yourself to embrace it and make it better.
And I think you just said it, when it's worth it, and you guys realized that you were worth it to stay together, and it
Yes.
was worth. That's
That's
beautiful.
wonderful.
I don't know. I'm still working on that.
There's always going to be trials and tribulations, and there's going to
Yes.
be ups and downs. And, the idea is like, I'm her biggest fan, and hopefully she's my biggest fan.
Well,
I don't know
was.
about that. Wait a minute.
Sorry,
My
Brian.
twin brother. Me and my
Brian
twin
and
were
Sean,
together.
Brian and Sean were number one for
We
a long
were.
time.
I don't know.
We
My
even-
sister waited 3 hours to meet.
Well, we even picketed out of all my children when he lost his job. And we had, whatever his name, Brian Franz, don't know jack about daytime. I remember, and we're walking the streets.
They were. Yeah. But yeah. So
You didn't pick it for me when I was in federal court
Now
on
I
the
will.
stand for 8 hours.
Well, now we know you. We can't.
yeah, but you have to have faith. You have to believe. I think that we put, for me, I believe we put God at the top,
Yes, please.
and then we take care of ourselves as the way that need to be taken care of. And the thing that is, you have to learn, or I've learned how to talk to her.
Yes.
And how to listen, because I can be very explosive. It's my nature. She'll say, Jack,
Do you know
don't
what's
yell.
interesting?
I'm not yelling. I'm a Sicilian.
I
I'm
was
from
gonna
But do you know
say,
what's
it's
interesting
Italian.
about
It's
how much time do we have? A minute.
4
1
minutes,
second.
Because what's interesting about what he said is really important because of my history with domestic violence, anything that a man showed anger, even my oldest son, if he just showed normal, like it's just
Yes.
different than mine, that would trigger something with me. And I had to realize, no, it doesn't. Is there anything behind that when he said it other than he's trying to express himself?
Right.
And so I think that's important to know too. What are your scars? What are your damages? What do they have to do with now?
Absolutely.
And then we both changed. The listening part
And don't
exaggerated.
bring your old past into a new
or
relationship.
understand why it triggers.
Right.
That's very
That
good.
really doesn't
Yeah.
have to do with him.
Yes.
It has to do with
Right.
me.
Yes.
Right. And the other part of it is that you can be in an argument, you can be disagreeing. We don't really fight, but we can have a disagreement and argue about something. And character assassination is off the table.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
very
Yes.
good.
That
That's very
never, ever, you
very
can
good.
call me a lot of names, but when you go after, because I deserve to be called a lot of names maybe at times, however, my rule, no character assassination.
That's awesome.
Call me every name in the book. It's not going to bother
Yeah,
me.
but we don't even do that. You know, I mean,
However,
it's-
but I just
yeah.
want to say, but
Yeah.
when someone goes, well, when you go, that to
Yeah.
me, that's,
Well, the blaming,
Yeah.
start looking inward
Yeah.
instead of
Right.
pointing at. But anyway,
But I
we're
think
out
it's
of
interesting.
time.
I think it's interesting to have different opinions.
I agree
too.
with you.
Yes.
It makes life interesting.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
going to have a show with
I'm
both
right,
of you
you're
on
wrong.
together.
no, you're right, I'm wrong.
Thank you.
But anyway, we want to thank you both. We love you
Yes.
dearly.
Thank
And
you.
Love you.
It was
thank
a
you both.
pleasure.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you all for watching. And until next time, keep pressing on.
For more information about I Pressed on podcast, visit chrisaugustministries.com. Find out who our next guests will be, as well as airtimes and dates. Please consider making a donation. Your donation helps fund all of the ways we spread God's word and testimony.
Your life was like the perfect song,